The bar's neon sign flickered, casting a red glow over the rain-slicked pavement, as if the city itself was bleeding. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of whiskey, smoke, and unspoken desires. I poured another shot, my hands steady despite the storm brewing in my chest. My name's Eli, and I'm the guy behind the counter at the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar in Brooklyn where dreams come to drown. I'm an Omega, but not the kind you'd expect. No sugar-sweet scent or delicate charm here. My pheromones carry the bite of whiskey and the grit of cigarette smoke, a cocktail of defiance that keeps most alphas at bay. Most, but not him. Caleb walked in at 11:03 p.m. Same as he did every Friday. Broad shoulders, leather jacket, eyes like a forest fire green and untamed. He was an alpha, the kind who could command a room without saying a word. And every Omega in the bar turned their head. But his gaze, it always landed on me. Whiskey. Neat, he said, voice low, like gravel under boots. I slid the glass across the counter, our fingers brushing for a split second. That touch electric, dangerous sent a shiver down my spine. I hated how it made my pulse race, how it made me feel alive in a way I'd sworn I'd never let myself feel again. I wasn't always this guarded. Growing up in a small town upstate, I was the Omega everyone expected to settle down with a nice alpha, pop out a few kids, and live the American dream. But I wasn't built for that. My scent, my attitude, it all screamed rebellion. When I came out as gay at 17, my family didn't kick me out, but their silence did. I left for New York City the day I turned 18, chasing freedom and finding it in the chaos of dive bars and late-night crowds. The Rusty Anchor was my sanctuary, a place where I could be myself without apology. I slung drinks, bantered with regulars, and kept my heart locked away. Alphas came and went, drawn to the sweet-scented Omegas who giggled and batted their lashes. I wasn't one of them, and I was fine with that. Until Caleb. He started coming in 3 months ago. Always alone. Always ordering the same drink. He didn't flirt like the others. Didn't throw around his alpha dominance like a cheap cologne. Instead, he watched me, his eyes tracing the way I moved behind the bar, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. It unnerved me. It thrilled me. Tonight, the bar was quieter than usual, the jukebox humming a Springsteen tune. Caleb leaned forward, his elbows on the counter. You ever get tired of this place, Eli? He asked, his voice softer than usual. I smirked, wiping down the counter to avoid his gaze. Tired? Nah. This is my kingdom. But the truth was, I was tired not of the bar, but of the loneliness that clung to me like smoke. He chuckled, a sound that warmed the air between us. A kingdom of whiskey and broken dreams. Sounds about right. I shot him a look, half amused, half defensive. What's your deal, Caleb? You come in here every week, stare at me like I'm a damn painting, but you never say much. What do you want? His eyes darkened, and for a moment, I thought I'd pushed too far. Then he leaned closer, his scent pine and leather, with a hint of something sweeter flooding my senses. Maybe I'm just trying to figure you out, he said. You're not like the others. My heart stuttered, but I forced a laugh. Yeah, well, I'm no candy sweet Omega, if that's what you're after. He didn't smile. Good. I don't like candy. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. I turned away, busying myself with a stack of glasses. But my hands trembled. Caleb was dangerous not because he was an alpha, but because he saw me, and I wasn't sure I was ready to be seen. As the night wore on, the bar filled with the usual mix of drunks and dreamers. I caught Caleb watching me again, his expression unreadable. When he finally left, He slipped a folded napkin under his empty glass. I waited until the bar was nearly empty before opening it. Meet me tomorrow. Midnight. The pier. No signature. Just his messy scrawl. I crumpled the napkin. My chest tight. This was trouble. Caleb was trouble. But as I locked up the bar, the city humming beyond the door, I knew I'd be there. The Brooklyn Pier was a ghost town at midnight. The kind of place where secrets whispered in the wind. The air was sharp with salt and the distant hum of the city. And I stood under a flickering street lamp, my heart pounding like a drum. I shouldn't have come. But Caleb's note had burned a hole in my pocket all day. He appeared out of the shadows, his leather jacket catching the moonlight. You showed, he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Didn't have anything better to do. I lied, shoving my hands into my pockets to hide their trembling. The truth was, I'd spent the whole day replaying his words, his scent, the way his eyes seemed to see straight through me. We walked along the pier, the wooden boards creaking under our steps. The silence between us wasn't awkward, but it was heavy, like the air before a storm. I stole glances at him, trying to figure out what he wanted. Alphas like Caleb didn't chase omegas like Minute unless they had an agenda. So, I said, breaking the silence, what's this about? You gonna tell me you're secretly a poet or something? He laughed, a low, rumbling sound that made my chest ache. Nah, I'm no poet. Just a guy who's tired of pretending. I stopped walking, turning to face him. Pretending what? He hesitated, his green eyes searching mine. That I don't feel something when I'm around you. The words hit me like a punch. I wanted to laugh it off, to call him out for feeding me a line. But there was no lie in his eyes. Just raw, unguarded truth. My throat tightened, and I looked away, focusing on the dark water lapping against the pier. Don't, I said, my voice rough. Don't say shit like that unless you mean it. I mean it, he said, stepping closer. His scent enveloped me, and I hated how much I wanted to lean into it. Eli, I've been coming to that bar for weeks, trying to work up the nerve to say this. You're not like anyone I've ever met. You're real. You're you. I shook my head, stepping back. You don't know me. Caleb. You think you do, but you don't. Then let me, he said, his voice soft but firm. Let me in. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But letting someone in meant risking everything me heart. My freedom. The walls I'd built to keep myself safe. I'd been burned before. By an alpha who'd promised me the world and left me with nothing but scars. I'm not your type, I said, forcing a smirk. You like your omegas sweet. Right. I'm whiskey and smoke. Man, I'll burn you. He didn't flinch. Maybe I like the burn. My breath caught, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. The city lights glittered across the water, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying. Before I could respond, a shout broke the silencia, group of drunk guys stumbling down the pier, their laughter sharp and mocking. Caleb's posture shifted, his alpha instincts kicking in. He stepped closer to me, protective, and I hated how safe it made me feel. Come on, he said, nodding toward the end of the pier. Let's get out of here. We walked in silence, the tension between us thicker than ever. When we reached the end of the pier, he turned to me, his expression serious. I'm not asking for everything, Eli. Just a chance. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't expected: vulnerability. Caleb wasn't just an alpha throwing his weight around. He was a man, standing in front of me, asking for something real. And that scared me more than anything. I'll think about it, I said finally. my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, like he'd expected nothing more. That's enough for now. As we walked back to the city, the weight of his words settled into me. I didn't know if I was ready to let him in, but for the first time in years, I wanted to try. The next week at the Rusty Anchor was a blur of spilled drinks and restless nights. Caleb's words echoed in my head, a constant reminder of the choice I wasn't ready to make. Every time the door swung open, I braced myself, half hoping, half dreading he'd walk in. He didn't show on Friday. The bar felt emptier without him, the air less charged. I told myself it was better this way, no complications, no risks. But as I wiped down the counter at closing, my eyes kept drifting to the spot where he usually sat. Saturday night was busier, the crowd rowdier than usual. I was in the middle of pouring a round of shots when the door opened. And there he was, Caleb, in his leather jacket, his eyes finding me like a beacon. My heart lurched, but I kept my face neutral, focusing on the bottles in front of me. He didn't approach the bar right away. Instead, he leaned against the wall, watching me with that infuriating intensity. When the crowd thinned, he finally made his way over, sliding onto his usual stool. "Miss me?" he asked, a teasing edge to his voice. I snorted, pouring his whiskey. "You wish." But I had missed him, and that truth gnawed at me. We fell into our usual rhythm banter. Stolen glances, the occasional brush of fingers as I handed him his drink. But there was something different tonight, a tension that hadn't been there before. His eyes held a question, and I wasn't sure I had an answer. As the night wore on, a group of alphas at the end of the bar started getting loud, their laughter edged with cruelty. I caught snippets of their conversation slurs, mocking comments about omegas, about people like me. My jaw tightened, but I kept working, used to ignoring this kind of shit. Caleb, though, wasn't ignoring it. I saw his shoulders tense, his eyes narrowing as he listened. When one of the alphas made a particularly vile comment, Caleb stood, his presence commanding the room. "Shut your mouth," he said, his voice calm but laced with steel. The alpha laughed, turning to face him. "What's it to you? Man, just having some fun." Caleb stepped closer, his scent flaring with barely restrained anger. "Your fun's done. Apologize, or we're gonna have a problem." The bar went quiet, all eyes on them. I gripped the edge of the counter, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to tell Caleb to back off, to let me handle it. But another part, the part that was tired of fighting alone, wanted him to stay. The alpha muttered an apology, his friends looking away, and Caleb returned to his stool like nothing had happened. But I saw the way his hands clenched, the way his eyes flicked to me, checking if I was okay. "You didn't have to do that," I said later, when the bar was nearly empty. He shrugged, sipping his whiskey. "Yeah, I did." I didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever stood up for me like that, not without expecting something in return. I poured him another drink, on the house, and our fingers brushed again. This time, I didn't pull away. When he left, he didn't leave a note. Instead, he looked at me, his eyes soft but intense. "See you next week, Eli." I nodded, my throat tight. As the door closed behind him, I realized something. I was falling for him, and that terrified me more than any bar fight ever could. Falling for Caleb was like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing the fall would either break me or set me free. I spent the next few days wrestling with it, torn between wanting him and wanting to run. By the time Friday rolled around, I was a mess of nerves, my hands shaking as I polished glasses at the Rusty Anchor. He walked in at 11:03, right on time. The bar was packed, but the crowd seemed to part for him, his presence magnetic. He He slid onto his stool, his eyes locking onto mine like we were the only two people in the room. Whiskey. Neat, he said, but there was a softness in his voice, a question in his eyes. I poured his drink, my heart pounding. You're predictable. You know that. He grinned, leaning forward. And you're not. That's why I keep coming back. The flirting was new, bolder than before, and it threw me off balance. I tried to focus on work, but every time I looked up, he was there, watching me with that damn intensity. By midnight, the bar was thinning out, and I couldn't take it anymore. All right, I said, leaning across the counter. What's your game? Caleb, you're not just here for the whiskey. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. No game. Eli, I told you, I want a chance. With you. My breath hitched, and I hated how vulnerable I felt. Why me? You could have any Omega in this city. Ones who smell like candy, who fit your world. His eyes darkened, and he reached out, his hand resting on mine. I don't want them. I want you. Whiskey, smoke, and all. The touch of his hand sent a jolt through me, and for a moment, I let myself believe him. But then the door slammed open, and a group of rowdy regulars stumbled in, breaking the moment. I pulled my hand back, busying myself with their orders. But Caleb's words lingered, heavy and warm. Later, as I was closing up, he stayed behind. The bar was empty, the jukebox silent. He helped me stack chairs, his movements easy, like he belonged here. When we finished, he turned to me, his expression serious. Come out with me tomorrow, he said. Not here, not the pier, somewhere real. I hesitated, my instincts screaming to say no. But there was something in his eyes, hope, fear, something that mirrored my own heart. Okay, I said, barely audible. One chance. His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. That's all I need. The next night, he took me to a small jazz club in Manhattan, a place I'd never been. The music was soulful, the crowd diverse, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. We really talked about our pasts, our fears, the things we'd never told anyone. He told me about growing up in a strict alpha family, expected to follow a path he didn't want. I told him about the scars I carried, the ones no one could see. When he walked me home, the city quiet around us. He stopped outside my apartment. I meant what I said. Eli, he murmured, his hand brushing my cheek. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't kiss him. Not yet. But as I closed the door behind me, my heart was racing. And for the first time, I let myself hope. Hope is a dangerous thing. It sneaks up on you, makes you believe in things you've spent years convincing yourself you don't deserve. And with Caleb, hope was a wildfire, spreading faster than I could control. We started seeing each other outside the bar coffee shops, late-night walks, a diner with greasy burgers and better company. Each moment chipped away at my walls, and I hated how much I loved it. Caleb was patient, never pushing, but his presence was relentless, a steady warmth that made me want to believe in something more. But the world doesn't let you forget who you are. A week later, I was working a busy shift when a new face walked into the rusty Ancora tall alpha with a smirk that set my teeth on edge. He wasn't a regular, but I knew his type, entitled, aggressive, the kind who thought Omegas were theirs to claim. He ordered a drink, his eyes lingering on me too long. You're not what I expected, he said, leaning closer. Most Omegas smell like dessert. You're different. I forced a smile, keeping my voice steady. Whiskey, not candy. What do you want to drink? He didn't answer, just kept staring, his scent overwhelming. Territorial. I felt the familiar coil of fear in my gut, but I pushed it down. I'd dealt with guys like this before. I could handle it. Caleb was there that night, sitting at his usual spot. I saw his jaw tighten as he watched the alpha, his hands curling into fists. I shook my head slightly, warning him to stay out of it. The last thing I needed was a scene. But the alpha wasn't done. He grabbed my wrist as I set his drink down, his grip tight. "Come on, sweetheart," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Why don't you smile for me?" Before I could pull away, Caleb was there, his hand on the alpha's shoulder, yanking him back. "Let him go," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. The alpha laughed, standing to face him. "What's your problem, man? Just having a little fun." Caleb didn't blink. "Touch him again, and you'll regret it." The bar went silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. I wrenched my wrist free, stepping between them. "Enough," I snapped, glaring at the alpha. "Get out." He hesitated, then smirked and backed off, tossing a bill on the counter before leaving. The bar slowly came back to life, but Caleb's eyes were still on me, filled with worry. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft. I nodded, but I wasn't. My wrist ached, and the memory of that alpha's grip brought back things I'd buried years ago, an ex who'd thought he owned me, who'd left bruises I could still feel. I turned away, busying myself with cleaning, but Caleb didn't leave. When my shift ended, he walked me home, silent but close. At my door, he stopped, his hand hovering near mine. "You don't have to go through this alone, Eli," he said. "Not anymore." I looked at him, my throat tight. "I've always been alone. It's easier that way." He shook his head, his eyes fierce. "It doesn't have to be." I didn't have an answer for that. But when he pulled me into a hug, his arms strong and warm, I didn't pull away. For the first time, I let myself lean into someone else, and it felt like coming home. Leaning into Caleb was like stepping into a storm, beautiful, chaotic, and terrifying. We were spending more time together, stealing moments between my shifts and his work as a mechanic. He'd show up at the bar with a grin, helping me close up, and we'd talk until the city fell asleep. But the closer we got, the more I felt the weight of my past. I hadn't told him everything, not about Ryan, the alpha who'd broken me years ago. Ryan had been charming at first, all promises and sweet words. But his love had turned possessive, controlling. When I left him, he'd made sure I'd never forget him. His final words a promise to find me again. I thought I'd left that life behind. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. One night, as I was locking up the rusty anchor, I saw a figure across the street, watching me. The street lamp caught his face, and my blood ran cold. Ryan. Older, harder, but unmistakable. I fumbled with the keys, my heart racing. He didn't approach, just stood there, his eyes locked on me. When I got home, I triple-checked the locks, but sleep didn't come. The next day, I saw him again, outside the coffee shop where Caleb and I met. He didn't say anything, just watched, his presence a silent threat. I didn't tell Caleb. I couldn't. He was already too deep in my life, and dragging him into this mess felt like asking for trouble. But Caleb wasn't blind. He noticed the way I flinched at shadows, the way my scent sharpened with fear. "What's going on, Eli?" he asked one night, as we sat on my couch, a movie playing unnoticed in the background. "Nothing," I lied, but my voice betrayed me. He turned to face me, his eyes searching. "Don't do that. Don't shut me out." I wanted to tell him, to let him carry some of the weight, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I kissed him. It was desperate, messy, a collision of fear and need. He kissed me back, his hands gentle but firm, grounding me in a way I hadn't thought possible. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, he whispered. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. But deep down, I knew Ryan wasn't the kind of problem you face together. He was a ghost, a reminder of everything I'd tried to escape. The next night, Ryan was at the bar. He didn't approach, just sat in the corner, his eyes on me. I poured drinks with shaking hands, my mind racing. Caleb wasn't there, and I was glad I didn't need to see this. But when Ryan left, he slipped a note under his glass. You can't run forever. I burned the note in the sink, my hands trembling. I wasn't running anymore. This was my life, my home, and I wasn't going to let him take it from me. But as I locked up that night, the shadows felt heavier, and I knew this wasn't over. Ryan's presence was a poison, seeping into every corner of my life. I saw him everywhere outside the bar, near my apartment, even in my dreams. I stopped sleeping, my nerves frayed, my scent sharper than ever. Caleb noticed. Of course. He always noticed. You're scaring me, Eli, he said one night, as we walked through Central Park, the autumn leaves crunching under our feet. Tell me what's wrong. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But every time I opened my mouth, the word stuck, trapped by fear and shame. I'd built a life here, a fragile one, and telling Caleb about Ryan felt like admitting I'd never really escaped. Instead, I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. Just stay with me, I said, my voice barely audible. He wrapped an arm around me, his warmth a shield against the world. Always, he said, and I believed him. But belief wasn't enough. 2 nights later, Ryan made his move. I was closing up the bar, alone, when he stepped out of the shadows. His scent hit me first bitter, possessive, the same as it had been years ago. Miss me, Eli, he said, his voice smooth but laced with menace. I froze, my keys dangling in my hand. Get out of here, Ryan, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. He stepped closer, his smile cold. You thought you could just walk away. You're mine, Eli. Always will be. I backed toward the door, my heart pounding. I'm not yours. I never was. He laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. You'll see. I'm patient. Before I could respond, headlights cut through the darkness, and Caleb's truck pulled up. He was out of the driver's seat in seconds, his eyes blazing as he took in the scene. Step away from him, he growled, his voice low and dangerous. Ryan smirked, sizing him up. This your new alpha? Cute. Caleb didn't hesitate. He stepped between us, his body a wall. You heard me. Walk away, or I'll make you. Ryan held his ground for a moment, then backed off, his smile never fading. This isn't over, he said, his eyes on me. Then he disappeared into the night. Caleb turned to me, his face a mix of anger and worry. Who the hell was that? I couldn't lie anymore. The truth spilled out. Ryan. The abuse. The years I'd spent running. Caleb listened, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. When I finished, he pulled me into his arms, his scent grounding me. He's not touching you again, he said, his voice fierce. I promise. I wanted to believe him, but Ryan's words echoed in my head. This wasn't over. And deep down, I knew I'd have to face him myself. The final showdown came on a rainy night, the kind where the city felt like it was holding its breath. I'd spent days preparing, steeling myself for what I knew was coming. Ryan wasn't the type to let go, and I was done running. Caleb wanted to handle it, to protect me, but I couldn't let him fight my battles. This was my past, my demon, and I needed to face it. So when Ryan's next note arrived, slipped under the bar's door, with an address and a time I didn't tell Caleb. I went alone. The address was an abandoned warehouse in Red Hook, the kind of place where no one would hear you scream. I stepped inside, the air damp and heavy, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. Ryan was waiting, his silhouette stark against the flickering light of a single bulb. "You came," he said, his voice almost proud. "I knew you would." "I'm not here for you," I said, my voice steady. "I'm here for me. To end this." He laughed, stepping closer. "You think you can just walk away? You're an Omega. Eli, you need me." I stood my ground, my scent flaring whiskey and smoke, sharp and unyielding. "I don't need you. I never did. I've built a life, a real one, and you don't get to take that from me." His smile faded, replaced by something darker. He lunged, but I was ready. Years of working in dive bars had taught me how to move, how to fight. I dodged, grabbing a metal pipe from the floor and swinging it at his knees. He stumbled, cursing, but I didn't stop. I wasn't fighting for survival anymore. I was fighting for my future. The struggle was brutal, raw, but I held my own. When he finally went down, panting and defeated, I stood over him, my chest heaving. "Don't come near me again," I said, my voice cold, "or you'll regret it." I walked away, leaving him in the dark. The rain washed over me as I stepped outside, cleansing, freeing. For the first time in years, I felt light, like the weight of my past had finally lifted. Caleb was waiting at my apartment, his face pale with worry. I'd texted him before going to the warehouse, just in case, and he'd been pacing ever since. When he saw me, he pulled me into his arms, his scent enveloping me. "You're okay," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm more than okay," I said, pulling back to look at him. "I'm free." We stood there, rain-soaked and alive, and I kissed him. It wasn't desperate this time, wasn't born of fear. It was real, raw, a promise of something new. Caleb kissed me back, his hand steady, his heart mine. The days that followed were a blur of healing, of building something real. The rusty anchor became our place, not just mine. Caleb helped me repaint the walls, and we laughed over spilled paint and shared dreams. My scent whiskey and smoke never changed, but it didn't need to. Caleb loved me for it, for me, and that was enough. In a city of millions, we'd found each other, two souls who didn't fit the mold but fit together perfectly. And as we stood behind the bar one night, his hand in mine, I knew this was my happy ending, not a fairy tale, but something better, something real.